we need is well refined.
Right. So what Dan's talking about also there with the going out to your existing social network, not throwing it out to the world. So basically all these three sites are more broad world-based systems. So the second thing that I felt like was missing was there wasn't a way to actually share a critique with a person in the site that lets you actually go in and interact with the art and communicate that interaction to the other artist. Because when you're doing it, you just sort of, you can type out words, you can do things like that, which can be useful, but what I really felt was missing was in real world presentations, people point at the art. They say, what is happening here? Well, what if you move this here? Or things like that. And it's hard to communicate all that just with words. So what I developed was a system where you can go in, and this is the website I've been developing, and you actually go in and you can actually critique the work by just sketching over it.
This is all what you might consider in the software world, either alpha or beta type stuff. So what you're seeing are very early ideas that are starting to come to life.
So what you can do with this is you can actually sketch. You can say, what is that? Get rid of that. I think you only need 3. I mean, whatever you want to say. But then you can send this information onto the person and say, whatever you want, limit smoke drills. You send the critique, and then it'll upload it to the person, and they can actually get your critique and see what you're thinking and really interact with it. I think I deleted it on the previous one. Let me get this guy here.
Artists oftentimes work with Wacom tablets and stuff, so this is not an unusual thing for them to be able to do. They can get a fairly good level of drawing and consistency. He's working with a mouse, and of course that's difficult. But in the past, to be able to do this, somebody might put it up on the web or at a site like Deviant or something. You have to download it, you have to draw on it, make your critiques, scan it, re-upload it, put it back in the right spot, and that's what 3 or 4 steps. Now you don't have to do that. Everything, this is one.
Right, and the additional thing this step will do is it will send that off. It alerts people that you've changed something. So this sent off an email to all the people who you've sent your feed to. It says, hey, check this out. Sends them the thumbnail, the image. They can come in. They can. And it tries. That's the way it ties it into people's existing networks. Again, going back to that. So that's the 2 things: being able to actually communicate your critique to someone effectively, and then also being able to do that inside your existing social network. So those are the 2 ideas. Are there any questions on that?
You had, in your presentation you showed, you had some other drawings. Some of them,
yeah, they all, those are the 2 points really, and then I went over the graph which shows sort of the differences, and do you want me to try and pull that up, or we can...
No, that's all right. I mean, I think everybody gets the idea of what you're trying to do and why it's important. It's a very simple idea. It seems limited use, but in today's web right now, I mean, what they do is they throw everything up on a website, or as Tommy says, they put everything in a forum. It's a very linear, it's not very conducive to the art world, to criticism. I think your point was, in your presentation at school, you had made note that he had shown it to some professionals, and so the observational work that he did was, what's this? They were pointing at something in the drawing, and that was the breakthrough that led him into this particular idea, because what's this, or what are you doing? And so that ability to interact almost, and if you built on chat or in other social networking kind of capabilities, you could almost do this stuff real time. So I think that was an important part of it, is what's this, and so now you're giving people the opportunity to interact back and forth over the work. This is not limited to just Tommy's idea. I've probably run across maybe 5 or 6 students who are all thinking about doing stuff like this.
Tommy, I'm curious, and I'm not asking this as criticism of the idea because it's awesome, but have you gone further and thought about copyright and the implications there by any chance?
Well, for the users, there would have to be a certain extent when you're releasing it onto the web. Like, you're letting the other people, you're asking them to critique it. It's not, none of the stuff, the people critiquing it, they're not going to like own that unless, I mean, there's all the rules I don't think would actually conflict with that, because you can share whatever you want. What are you meaning specifically with copyright in terms of?
Well, and this is from an understanding, I'm not actually understanding how it's going to be used, but like, let's say you created a character, and the ultimate use was in a movie, and you got compensated for that, but you had 150 people that helped you get to that final product. I'm just curious where their role would be in that.
I'm not an expert on copyright.
Well, yeah, and I didn't mean that. I didn't want to, but I'm just curious about like Creative Commons. You might explore that, because I would think that something like this would have to almost have a disclaimer with it.
What he doesn't, what's not really baked in here just yet is that, and we've talked about this, right now he's talking about, let's say this table is his social network right here, this group, right? And this whole group is like one layer beyond it, right? So I think that at some point you can turn on and off the level of people that you want to be able to see and interact with this. And so in a copyright sense, if you're doing it just from development and getting help, it's sort of his network. He's going to get that. If he wants to put it out to the world, there's probably a little checkbox somewhere that says broadcast this to the world, and it shows up. I mean, maybe it feeds into Twitter or Facebook or DeviantArt or other sites. What he's also didn't mention here is that in the development of this, he was actually working with an illustrator at one of the game companies. And so the two of them were playing back and forth, and the artist at the game company says, this is usable for us, because what happens is design, illustration, animation, modeling, all this stuff happens around the world 24 hours a day. So you see something like Pixar's movies and you think, well, maybe it's just done on San Francisco time. It's not. You know, it starts San Francisco, but there's a computer somewhere in the world running and rendering everything that you see in that movie 24 hours a day in a complete cycle to get it done. And so the artists are all working with each other all over the world. And so now this is a way to do something inside their existing offices and structures when they're doing creative concepts and stuff, where they can share this kind of artwork back and forth. So there's applications beyond just a student or beyond just an artist that happens to want to get his or her stuff out there. There becomes a business use to it. He hasn't explored any of this.
What's the next step?
The next step, it's still under development in terms of the actual drawing system in there. There's new stuff I've got that I'm working on putting in there. Also in terms of making it so that it's more limitable to certain groups or doing things like that to make it more useful for the professional artist team, essentially. That's where the sort of the collaboration and throwing back and forth ideas. So those are sort of the next steps of development.
And as we'll see in all of these presentations, these folks are predominantly artists, and so they don't live necessarily, except for maybe Philip here, as deeply into the programming world that's necessary. And this is one of the reasons why art and technology exists for UTD, that they haven't dialed it in just right? The artist can't sit down and program this site. I mean, you guys, what you'll see, have done some pretty amazing things, right? To be able to get it to this level. But to finish it off and to do it to where it gets out and it's usable, or a company buys it or wants to incorporate it, we need to take it to that next level, which also is going to include getting it to some computer science people, getting it to some programmers to be able to kick the tires and really make this robust. And then, of course, add the bells and whistles in design to make it really shine. There's the other part of it too is that, these guys know each other as artists, and I've encouraged them to get out and spend time with other artists and students and learn the things that it is that they need to know, why they would be using this and that kind of stuff. So like the chat functions or the certain functions that we don't see right now may actually be included down the road. So that's another step. Anyway. Okay, Tommy, thank you. Philip, I'll let you go.
Well, the Professional Language Group said we're all UTD students. So one of the, big things for us is a lot of communication. UTD, still really for the most part, computers.
UTD has 5 engineering, science,